Good evening. Thank you for joining us. They are our friends, our family, our neighbors. Asian Americans now mobilizing across the country, condemning a recent surge in racist attacks against the community, and reminding us all to not look the other way when they too often are made to feel just that, other. Here's my Nightline co-anchor, Juju Chang.
For too long, it's been an invisible problem. The violence against Asian Americans surging throughout the pandemic. This week, police investigating new incidents from a street in Seattle and a laundromat in San Francisco. To New York City, where a 56-year-old man was beaten for no apparent reason. Attacks targeting our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones. A woman viciously shoved. A 71-year-old lady punched in the face. A 36-year-old man stabbed in Chinatown on his way home from work. These attacks seemingly escalating over the past 2 months, prompting more than 1,000 people to protest in Oakland, calling for solidarity against Asian American violence.
Thank you for coming through.
Now the simmering anger boiling over, an uprising to stop the hate.
It is something in the psyche of this country where somehow it's okay to physically or verbally abuse Asian Americans. We're being scapegoated. And this is not just one community. It is every community.
Hollywood stars, athletes, Congress members, activists, and everyday Americans joining forces against not just the violence.
People got punched and pushed over. We have elderly who are being attacked.
But the casual racism Asian Americans endure every day in this country.
I've always kind of been the token Asian guy, or I've always had to prove myself a little bit more.
Basketball player Jeremy Lin of the Warriors G League called coronavirus on the court, speaking up in hopes of paving an easier path for others.
When the next Asian or Asian American comes along, that they won't have to fight as hard or fight uphill to be able to show what they can do.
And actress Olivia Munn lending her star status to the fight.
You know, when I look in the mirror, I see an Asian American woman. I don't just see a woman.
Like so many, Munn says the COVID-19 pandemic has been weaponized against Asians and Asian Americans.
I really was paralyzed. I didn't really know what to think, what to say.
When the previous administration said things publicly, like the Wuhan virus,
the China flu, the China virus, the plague from China, we have to be accurate.
Unapologetically, he helped to stoke the fires of anti-Asian violence against our communities.
Stop AAPI Hate began collecting more than 2,800 reports nationwide of anti-Asian hate between March and December.
Olivia!
Munn says her mission became personal after her friend's mother was attacked. Take me to that moment when you saw the surveillance video of your friend's mom being attacked. What went through your mind?
I was in shock. I mean, she's a very tiny woman, and she is hurled through the air to the point where her body is horizontal, her legs are flailing. And I think about my own mother, I think about my aunts, I think about the people in my family and how it could have happened to any of them.
Munn told us her friend's mom didn't even want to report the crime at first, but after the suspect was arrested, she now feels like she matters. Tell me how the younger generation is responding to that sort of cultural need to sort of stay quiet. Are younger Asian Americans being more vocal?
Yeah, we're being a lot more vocal than our parents and grandparents. I mean, there was this conditioning for the older generation to accept being a second-class citizen in your own country. Just surviving and not dying shouldn't be the aim for our families. You know, it shouldn't be the aim for anyone. Our parents, our grandparents, they paved the roads for us. And now it's our turn to take them back to the front of those roads and walk them down those paths and say, like, look, you belong here. You're an American and it's safe.
One of the videos that helped spark this fresh outrage, the senseless death of 84-year-old Thai immigrant Vishar Ratanapakdi, knocked to the ground while on his morning walk. The horrific video getting the attention of so many people, including actor Daniel Dae Kim.
It was a very visceral response. I got very angry. This is now a year of these kinds of things going on, but it was disheartening to see how many people did not know.
Police arrested a 19-year-old suspect who pled not guilty to murder and elderly abuse. His lawyer insists the attack was not racially motivated because the victim's face was fully covered with a mask and hat, so there was no knowledge of race. His lawyer instead calling it a break in the mental health of a teenager. But while Vishar's death made headlines, propelling this issue to the forefront, it's his life his daughter and son-in-law want to honor.
Happy birthday, dear grandpa.
He's a family man, gentleman. He's taking care of our family.
Even though Vishar's attack, like countless others, are not being investigated as hate crimes, it's still drawing attention to the alarming surge of xenophobic attacks.
You need to leave.
Asian piece of
Oh my God. Go back to whatever Asian country you belong in.
Montana says she's trying to find hope. It isn't easy.
I've been outside with the kid, and then I've been attacked verbally. They're yelling, and then you are sick, you are wireless Asian.
How did your kids react to that?
We know it's violence. We just walk away.
But that pain pales in comparison to her father's murder.
I miss him a lot every day. He's a caring person. We can't believe this happened.
Many in the Asian American community are harnessing the power of social media to share information on attacks and help hunt for suspects. My colleague Dion Lim of KGO TV in San Francisco is a prime example.
On social media, things are different. People get to know me on a little bit more of an intimate basis. They learn about me being bullied, growing up in very non-diverse parts of the country. So they feel that connection. And then on social media, there's also a buffer. There's a screen on a phone or a computer, so they feel protected. They don't have to lay it all out on the line. And then when they see other people comment on these posts, they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I can do this. I feel empowered to share my story.
Others using their influence online to raise awareness, 31-year-old software engineer Hugh Ma.
It all started when I was trying to help my mom find a vaccine. It was a pretty arduous process.
Ma started TurboVax, a hugely popular Twitter profile which tracks real-time availability of the vaccine. He's reportedly helped tens of thousands of New Yorkers get the shot. But as attacks against the Asian community spiked recently, Ma decided he needed to protest in a meaningful way, one that would capture people's attention. So he shut TurboVax down temporarily.
I wanted to illustrate through this action of taking the site down for 2 days that if we as a country don't listen to the concerns of Asian Americans, then we risk losing the contributions of Asian Americans as well. Growing up in Queens, I was not immune to anti-Asian bias. I grew up with people making offhand remarks about my slanted eyes, my yellow skin, my Ching Chong name.
Ma recommended people donate to a Chinatown nonprofit. He says the messages of hate started pouring in, but so did the support and the money. So far, the nonprofit has raised $105,000.
I just hope that my experience can show others that as long as you take the initiative and stand up for what you believe in, I think that you can make real change.
Thanks for joining us. Tonight, the outpouring of grief in the streets of Atlanta, where earlier this week, a shooter opened fire at 3 Asian-themed spas, killing 8 people, including 6 Asian women, raising questions about whether a toxic mix of gender and race collided. The shooting also fanning fears of anti-Asian bias, with attacks against the community seeing a recent spike across America. On a damp and dreary afternoon, terror and horror seizes the Atlanta area as a lone assailant launches an hours-long shooting rampage across multiple Asian-owned spas.
Some guy came in and took the gun, so everybody heard the gunshot.
We do not have a witness that actually is alive right now that can tell us who shot him.
21-year-old Robert Aaron Long arrives at Young's Asian Massage Parlor in Ackworth, Georgia, 45 minutes north of the city. The man allegedly sits in his car for almost an hour. Then around 4:50, he enters Young's and opens fire. Police arriving within minutes, finding a massacre.
Sounds like a...
4 are dead. Xiaojia Tan went by Emily. She was the owner of Young's and a licensed massage therapist. She would have turned 50 yesterday. Delana Ashley Yan was a 33-year-old mother of 2. She leaves behind a 13-year-old son and a baby born just 8 months ago. She'd been getting a couples massage with her husband Mario, who was in a separate room and was able to escape.
No se pone a pensar la familia que sufre, pues, y lo que deja todavía los niños que sufren por su mamá, su papá o que fallecen. No, eso no está bien. Justicia es lo que pido.
Paul Andre Michaels, 54, of Atlanta. Daoya Feng, 44, whose address wasn't immediately known. A 5th person is in stable condition, 30-year-old Elcius Hernandez Ortiz of Ackworth. He was leaving the store next door to the spa and was hit.
We never know when we're at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I feel like that's what happened with him.
Police gathering evidence from nearby surveillance footage, posting the images online in hopes the public can identify the shooter. Long's father calls 911.
I was there speaking with the family. They were very helpful in this apprehension.
Almost an hour after the first shooting, 30 miles away, police respond to a call about a robbery at the Gold Spa. It's in an area with a strip club and other spas.
We just heard numerous gunshots coming from across the street.
Inside Gold Spa, officers find 3 women shot. One of them is Hyunjung Grant.
She was quite literally the only thing that kept us running, calling every night to check up on us before she goes to bed, working for however long as she needed to.
As officers are tending to the dying victims, they're alerted to another shooting directly across the street at the 24-hour aromatherapy spa.
Some ladies got hurt, I think, and everybody's scared, so they're hiding behind. But the ladies passed out.
Inside, they find a Korean woman dead from a gunshot wound. The victims from the 2nd and 3rd shootings are Sunjung Park, age 74, Sunja Kim, age 69, and Young Ah-yu, age 63. There's so much we still don't know about many of these victims, their identities obscured, in part because of the complicated and highly racialized, even dangerous reality for some Asian women in America.
So we need to make sure if we have any Asian spas, we need to be checking on them.
Long's parents have also told authorities their son has a tracker app on his cell phone, and it's activated. Authorities locate Long traveling south on Interstate 75, disable his vehicle, arrest him.
He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate. It's the biggest mass shooting this country has seen since 2019, coming in the midst of an enormous spike in crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. This week alone, an 83-year-old Asian man assaulted, parts of his neck fractured, a 59-year-old Asian man beaten, nearly blinded in one eye, and a 76-year-old Asian woman punched in the eye, left bleeding.
For over a year, Asian Americans have been fighting an additional virus of hate and bigotry. Our community is bleeding. We are in pain, and for the last year, we've been screaming out for help.
The fear in the Asian community, especially in Atlanta, now at crisis levels.
How's it going?
Irene Pan owns a spa just a few minutes away from where the shooting took place.
When the sheriff's office said, oh, it's not race, it's just sex addiction, I really don't think so.
She says her employees just want a better life for their families.
Buying a house, having their own car, more freedoms.
So what did you call that?
What do I call that? So American dreams.
But those dreams now clouded with fear.
Personally, we just don't want this happen again. My worker is kind of concerned to come to work right now. Some people is crazy. I mean, they come without to say anything or argument, just shoot you.
She's now considering buying a gun for protection. For Jamie Webb, whose mother, Xiao Jie Tan, who owned Young's Asian Massage, the pain is more powerful than the fear.
I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. What does your heart feel like right now?
Empty. She never finished high school. And she, when I told her that I decided to go to college, she was so happy. She just wanted to celebrate because She's very proud of it.
You were the embodiment of your mother's dreams.
Yes.
When you saw this unfold, what went through your mind?
My first thought was for Jamie, a life-changing experience for both of us. The last couple of years, she would say, you know, I'm going to be able to retire soon.
How do you want your mom to be remembered?
She's a great mother. She wants us to have a good life. That's why she worked so hard.
Your mom would be very proud of you.
Yes.
And I know she was. And for more on the investigation and the search for a motive, here's ABC's Steve Osensami.
This is what heartbreak looks like across America. The strangers who are joining the families of victims to cry. This is also what it looks like to stand against hate. People of all colors speaking up and marching out for Asian Americans who feel under attack. In all, 8 people were gunned down in this killing spree. And the number one question for the accused murderer, why?
The suspect did take responsibility for the shootings.
Investigators say that 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long told them he struggled with a sex addiction, and that somehow in his mind he thought he'd fix himself by targeting the 24-hour spas where he was a regular. The gun police say he used? They say he bought it here on the day of the shooting. And if they hadn't stopped him, they think he would have made it to Florida.
It is very likely that there would have been more victims.
Authorities in Atlanta's suburbs and the city have now charged him with 8 counts of murder. Rodney Bryant is the interim police chief in Atlanta, where the killing spread between 2 spas.
I think that people thought that it was all wrapped up once we made the arrest. But now this is where the real work began.
What do you think about the chances of this becoming a hate crimes case?
It's just too early for me to make that determination because there's so many questions that are left unanswered. You have to look at the victims that we had in the city of Atlanta. All of our victims were female. All of our victims were Asian. There's so much more that needs to be uncovered.
The tone is slightly different in the suburbs, where the first 4 victims died and where the accused killer is in custody.
This is still early, but he does claim that it was not racially motivated.
The sheriff's office in the suburbs is having to defend itself after their spokesperson came across to some as racially insensitive, saying this about the accused gunman.
He was pretty much fed up at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
After that, it was a bad day for the sheriff, who removed this police captain from briefings on the case. It didn't help when people discovered this now deleted Facebook post by the same captain, telling his friends to buy T-shirts that say COVID-19 imported virus from China. It's the same type of message against Asians that people in the streets are trying to fight. Here in Atlanta, authorities say they get it, and there's lots of work to do.
It frightens Asian Americans, not just here, but across the country. I mean, people are scared.
We recognize the concern and the pain that they're going through. We're here to make sure that this doesn't fall through the crack, that we not miss one stone as it relates to investigating this case.
Our thanks to Steve. Coming up, from racism to sexism, the evolution of Asian American representation in Hollywood. Anti-Asian attack.
Catch the thrill of discount.
Watch Be Localish Deals and Steals.
March 26 at 7:30 on ABC 7. Sponsored by your local Nissan dealer. Catch the thrill of the Drive Nissan sales event now.
Anti-Asian attacks in America are not at all new. So how do you fight centuries-old hate? Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
Almost as soon as Asian immigrants set foot in this country, ethnic scapegoating followed right behind. Chinese workers in the mid-1800s helping to build the railroads heard they were taking American jobs.
Asians were never regarded as Americans, meaning that they were never given citizens' rights at the beginning of the Republic.
In 1871, a violent mob in Los Angeles lynched at least 17 Chinese residents, a massacre fueled by white resentment toward the growing immigrant population. In 1882, the animosity led Congress to pass the first and only law restricting an ethnic group coming into the country, the Chinese Exclusion Act. It lasted until 1943.
You make them the other through legislation, such as the passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act. To be an other is not simply, oh, you're someone else. You know, you're just not an American. It's not like that. It's also about the process of being objectified, of being less than human.
Soon after, what many consider one of the most shameful moments in American history, Japanese Americans treated as the suspect enemy in their own nation, placed in internment camps during World War II.
2/3 of those Japanese Americans were U.S.-born Americans, and they were forcibly relocated and incarcerated without due process.
For decades, Hollywood has both reflected and reinforced portrayals of Asian Americans as perpetual foreigners, from Breakfast at Tiffany's to 16 Candles.
What's happening, hot stuff?
Turning racism into laughs.
When you see nothing but that clownish, that buffoonish image, that implacably alien image constantly being painted on our faces, then it's so much easier to not think of us as human.
But of all the racist stereotypes, some of the most insidious are those that hypersexualize Asian women, frequently portrayed as sex objects, like in Austin Powers.
Austin Powers is very sexy.
Or the submissive women in massage parlors, like in Rush Hour 2.
Oh my goodness.
Asian women as the focus of the Western male gaze is nothing new, playing out in real life with the U.S. military in Asia fueling sex industries that exploited Asian women. But it's this scene from Full Metal Jacket that has permeated American culture like few others.
Me love you long time.
Those words used repeatedly in movies like The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Me love you long time.
And TV shows like South Park.
Me love you long time.
Those are the lines that people remember, and it haunts us.
Images have power. Stories have power.
Activists say the toxic mix of racism and misogyny in these portrayals influence the way Asian women are treated in society.
When you think of humans as objects and when you erase their humanity, then it is no surprise that our lives are seen as worthless.
In this year of racial reckoning, AAPI activists say the attacks must end, and that starts with stamping out the underlying conditions of otherism and racism that feed violence.
Racism and xenophobia are national problems. The only way to survive this pandemic, the only way to survive these violent attacks is to work together and recognize our common humanity.
Our thanks to Eva. Up next, the young Asian Americans stepping up to protect the most vulnerable.
Many plugins are...
Resorts World Catskills is now
on Here and Now.
And finally tonight, fighting anti-Asian bias by finding strength in numbers.
The problem that we saw was so many of our elders being violently attacked for no reason.
When I heard about the attacks happening with the Asian community, I immediately knew how it must be or how it must feel for many of them.
Another man knocked to the ground in broad daylight.
Compassion in Oakland came to be through social media, complete strangers that had a common goal to protect the elderly in Chinatown. Anyone can request for a chaperone. It doesn't have to be an elderly individual. They don't have to be Asian. Since we've launched, we've had about 900 people sign up to volunteer. And then since Atlanta, we've had 300 people sign up in the week. I'm actually fourth generation Chinese American. So my grandparents were actually born in the US. That's why it's so hard for me to see elderly Asians being harmed. And it doesn't matter if your family came here 10 generations ago or 1 generation ago, that we're all fighting for the same dream.
The underlying foundation of everything we do is empathy and compassion. My whole vision behind SafeWalks was to try and inspire everyone to step up and step out and look out for fellow New Yorkers. We have many Mandarin speakers and Cantonese speakers right now on our team. If for someone like myself who can't speak the language, I can just tell, the body language and just the reception, the smiles and the waving, they know what we're doing. And so that it's great to know.
Hey, you guys.
It's a great feeling. We hope to live in a world devoid of racism, or a world whereby one human is treated as less. We need everyone involved. We need all hands on deck.
I have a lot of hope. Make this world a better place. Please, we need you.
Big or small, be the change you want to see. Sometimes it's hard when there seems to be so much hate around us, but in the struggle grows the seed of strength. Strength in ourselves, strength in our neighbors, the strength to come together and unite against bigotry. Stop the hate. That's Nightline. We'll see you same time next week. Thanks for staying up with us. Good night, America.